Welcome to Vox Scream, a Kill Team podcast where we aim to help players of all skill levels supercharge their game and separate the signal from the noise. I'm Mark Meyer, joined by Kill Team heavyweights George Pratt and Joe Gallo. We're coming to you from the Triangle region in North Carolina. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, just wanted to add something on as we get this episode started. George just did an interview with the Squad Games podcast. He was talking with Jason Fay yet again about the Angels of Death and how kick-ass that team is. So go and check that out on the Squad Games podcast feed when you get a chance. I'm really excited to give it a listen to. Also, we talk a little bit about some community tools that we're adding to, sort of enhance the experience for fans of the show. One thing that we didn't mention in the show is that we've just launched our Instagram. So we're going to include a link to that in the show notes, as well as a link to the Squad Games podcast. And the nice thing about that is we're going to do like some teasers for episodes and, have some other images and shit up there too. So check it out. It's going to be cool. There's going to be lots of links in the show notes this time around. So check out all that stuff down below and enjoy the episode. What's going on, fellers?
Sup, I'm a real human. It's great.
Hey, welcome back, you guys.
Fully back from the dead, George. Glad that you're, living again. Anything that you've missed while you've been bedridden for 6 years, whatever it's been?
Yeah, I feel like that meme from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with Rita Repulsa. Like, I have come back from 10,000 years.
I would love to see you dressed as Rita Repulsa doing Rita Repulsa things, just saying.
Listen, I'd look good in that dress.
I would dress like the floating head in the tank.
Oh, you would make a great Zordon. That'd be great.
Zordon, that's his name? I used to love Power Rangers when I was a kid. I don't remember any of it. I remember one time they were ninjas, and I remember one time they were trucks.
Oh, do you remember the time they were cops?
I don't.
Or dinosaurs?
Or
were they dinosaurs?
I remember the dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs was the best version. I mean, come on. They're dinosaurs. It's like the Transformers thing. Like they're always better as dinosaurs.
I think the trucks was my favorite. And actually the original was probably my favorite. I remember they had the the original Power Rangers movie where they fought the Ooze. That was really fun. Yeah.
I watched the movie and like an episode. I don't know fuck or all about Power Rangers, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, they're fun. They were everywhere when we were kids and they just disappeared off the planet.
I was a Zoids kid.
Zoids was cool.
Zoids was I knew about Zoids but never touched it.
I watched the show like once or twice, and then I bought one of those like model kits, kind of like a Gundam kit for a Zoid time.
I had one of those too.
I used to love those like model kits. I would get them at like Walmart or something for like $10. It was the gateway drug. Now that I think about it, I think about that sort of stuff all the time now that I do Kill Team and just like doing hobby stuff in general. Because I used to hate mold lines so much, and now I can just get rid of them. It's great.
Yeah.
It's funny the way I actually got introduced into like 40K in general, like Games Workshop stuff. I didn't know as a kid, but my uncle had a whole display of the Lord of the Rings miniature game that Games Workshop does. He had this whole thing set up like this Helm's Deep thing. He gave me a book. I don't even remember what the name of the book was, but it had 40K stuff in it. And it's burned into my head, like looking at the pictures of, oh, this is so cool, blah, blah, blah. And there was a lot of like old Hammer, like fantasy stuff in there too. And cut to 20 years later, I went, that is the same stuff. I wonder if it was like subconsciously planted in my brain to like get into this hobby, 20 years later.
Dude, I got into this hobby the same way I get into every hobby. Poor self-control. I saw people playing it at a hobby store and went, oh, that looks fun. I'll buy some of that.
I actually don't remember how I I think I just took the jump and just jumped into the league and just waited to see what would happen. And like, it's all just like a vague blur from there.
I wanted to split like the starter set with my roommate in like 2021 or 22. I don't remember. It was like the 9th edition starter set, the Necrons versus the Space Marines.
That was a good
box. He was like, I don't know, man. Let me think about it. And then he gets me the core book for Christmas for ninth edition, and then I was like flipping through it and looking at the models, and that's when I like really understood what it was. Because like when I suggested we split it, I was like, "Hey, it'll be cool, it'll be fun," but I didn't really understand what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, here I am, poor but having a lot of fun.
Not as poor as you would be if you were playing Big Hammer, so there's at least that.
Well, always a silver lining. We got some fun stuff on the docket today, but before we get into that, just want to take a moment to tease out some current events. Obviously, if you're listening to this, we've got the Cherokee Open coming up in just another day or two. That's going to be a lot of fun. George, anything you want to tease out about that before before it's just lost in the wind?
Yeah, so one of the things I can now say is that we will have a raffle for a professionally painted competitive Jaegers team. And there'll be $10 a ticket for that. So that's going to be super cool.
I was really excited when Day mentioned that in our before we started recording the hobby pod that she was doing that. I really hope she was going to have time to finish that. So that's a really cool thing that we're doing. I think NYO just straight up gives you a team if you win something, right?
It's either best painted or best general.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool. So I'm really glad we're giving everyone an opportunity to get access to a really fun team painted brilliantly by our local painter, Day, as you all heard in the hobby pod.
Yeah, that's so sick. That's such an exciting opportunity for everyone. Also want to take a moment to tease out that we have I don't know if it's going to be live by the time that we've got this podcast out, but we do have some community updates. We are launching our own Discord, hopefully just to kind of collect some of the disparate people who are listening to our podcast and give us a space to talk with everybody and, get some conversation generating amongst y'all as well. Really excited about that. Guys, anything you want to mention about the Discord?
No, other than I'm really excited that we're launching it. I'm excited to do the main moderation for everything and be your lead into whatever flame war you want to get into about the day. But yeah, I'm excited for it to be a space for our community to grow, learn competitively, and become a family.
Boo, gross. Yeah, I just want to say that the Discord is gonna go up. It's already available. We're gonna put it live. It, however, will almost certainly grow and change, but it's a Discord. You know all that. It'll change. But luckily, we'll have you, the community, to give us feedback on what you think we should add or remove.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. We've all got day jobs and other stuff to do. So we're going to launch what we've got and build it from there. I'm really excited just to have the chance to meet and talk with everyone who listens to the podcast. I'm terrible at keeping up with my own Discord and the local Discords and really just communication in general. But I am still excited to have the chance, and I'm going to try really hard.
Yeah, I'm really excited to meet y'all because y'all have been really enjoying the podcast, and I'm super excited to engage with you guys, not necessarily in person, but in cyberspace.
Yeah, and very similarly to the Discord, we will be launching a Patreon. It'll be go live with the Discord, and you'll have some Discord benefits if you're a Patreon supporter. And we're planning on doing some things with the Patreon, like providing some detailed written guides on some teams, or for higher tiers, doing some video content. So look out in the future. We want to be doing, again, like Mark said, we all have day jobs, we all work. I've been on the podcast while at work a number of times, so you have to give us a little bit of time. We're planning on doing a guide, 2 guides a month for the moment until we can find the time to do some more. I've got video setup and stuff, so I plan on doing that. And yeah, we've got a couple of maybe some secret projects and stuff too that we're going to put on there.
Yeah, and the more you guys support us, the more you pull us away from those day jobs. As much as all 3 of us would love to dedicate our lives to this podcast 24/7, as it's kind of what we enjoy doing. That part of that comes with your support, and we really appreciate it if you're willing to do that, and you are an absolute chat if you do so. So thank you, and I'm really excited to see what the next steps are.
I know for myself specifically, I think that our plan right now is to just kind of make sure that we're all working evenly on the podcast and splitting the money up evenly amongst us. And so I am hoping to take my share and just like put it aside so I can have money to like travel to larger kill team events. Because I mean, basically, like, you know, the luxury of travel is kind of the barrier to entry to going to a lot more of these like larger events. And I really want to attend and, you know, meet with and engage and, you know, just have fun with the larger kill team community. So that's, you know, I think what a lot of us are planning on doing with the money. So any support would be greatly appreciated. Obviously, not obligated, but thank you in advance for any who are planning to contribute. And for those who aren't, hope you still enjoy the podcast and we'll still dap you up, still have a good time, still join us on the Discord, still want to talk and have a good time with you.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe you'll get some freebie tips from us.
Isn't that the entire podcast?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, it's you know, you got to do these, advertise these things in an appealing way, right? Nah,
Yeah.
we're just, you know, like I said, just come join. It'll be a fun, chill space.
Well, speaking of free advice, this week, I think what I want to really talk about in preparation for Cherokee, as well as some other tournaments we've got coming up in March and April, we've kind of teased this idea in the last few months of the game plan, where you want to kind of have a set strategy when you're going into games. And so today I really want to talk about how we're generating a game plan and maybe how you're adapting a game plan once the flow of the game has sort of established itself. So I would love to hear from you both just a little bit about how you each, you know, just really quickly, like how are you generating a game plan with a team?
So I like to make a game plan, and for the most competitive of players, you have a general idea of what your opponent's team is capable of, or you've looked at the rules and you know exactly what your opponent's team is capable of. So I start with that, and then I move on to tac ops and board layout at the same time. Because a lot of the time, the board layout will determine the tac ops, and the tac ops will determine how you want to approach this board layout. So I think of them simultaneously. And then I build my game plan around the tac op and how I can move around the board to score that tac op, while also scoring the crit op, and how I can control 2 of the 3 objectives. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the middle objective and my home objective. Sometimes it'll be my home and the opponent's territory objective that I'm gunning for. Again, it all depends on the board. And then from there, you pick the models on your team that will most get you to that tac op and which 2 objectives you're going for. And for the most part, I don't include the kill op in my game plan. I only kill models that are in the way of me doing my plan. Unless my opponent just leaves a model out to be shot and killed, and I don't have to commit someone to do that, who's like, essentially, unless they're baiting me, I'll kill someone they give me for free, if it's not going to be detrimental to my game plan. Like, I don't want to waste activations and actions not doing my game plan just to kill someone. Like, I'd rather continue to do my game plan and leave someone alive than shoot someone and have them like, oops, I just got baited.
So, Joe, really quick before you dig into how you make your game plan, I wanted to point out something interesting in the way that you make your game plan, George, is you talk about how important the map is to picking your tac op and how essential the tac op and the map are to creating that game plan. It's so interesting to think about this in terms of just like the game sequence, right? Because initiative happens and then you pick which side of the map and then you pick your units and then you're supposed to pick your tac ops after that. But it almost seems like you're kind of picking your tac ops before you pick your units.
Yeah, in my head, I go through all of that before I even pick my units. Like, there's a couple of ITD maps where if you're on one side or the other, it's easier to get to your opponent's home objective. And if I'm playing a team like Felgor Ravagers or Vespids, who play storm objectives really well, actually, I'll pick Vespids, I'll pick Storm, and I will hope to win that side. on the initiative. And if I don't, I'm still going to take that. It depending on the map, if it's still okay for me to try and get to the home objective, I'll do it. Or if I don't win that side, then I have to think, all right, well, storm objective's out. Can I do confirmed kill instead? Or if I'm Ravagers, can I do plant beacons instead? Something. You should always have 2 tac ops that you can jump into, depending on, like, is this side of the board better for this tac op than this tac op? And is that side of the board the other opposite of that?
Yeah, and I just really wanted to point that out because I know for a while I was really intentional about picking tac ops like after I had picked units because I was really just trying to memorize the game sequence. But it is just really important to be thinking about all of this stuff like ahead of time. I know like for our local meta, I think a lot of people in our league are spending a lot of time thinking about the matchup and the map and the mission and all these sorts of orbiting factors before the game because we get our matchups, days, sometimes even almost a whole week ahead of time. So there's a lot of like planning and forethought that goes into a competitive league game in our local league. But that same kind of approach can be taken when you're going into a tournament game, right? Like you can have a couple of these sort of pre-made game plans that you can kind of default to. You can know, again, to your point, George, which like 2 or 3 tac ups of yours work really well for your team's game plan and interact well with how you expect your opponent's team to play and kind of build off from there. Joe, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you kind of craft your game plan, and does it kind of fall in line with how George's been making his game plans, or is it different, would you say?
Mine's a little different. And I think it comes down to play style, like we've kind of discussed before.
Absolutely.
So like particularly a lot of my tac op takes typically are like, what is the hardest thing for my opponent to deny me, or like what is going to actively mess with their game plan? So like, for example, with Secure Center, if they're having to be focused on being in a certain building or both of the buildings or pushing me off of heavy terrain, they're not focused on planting beacons. They're not focused on, any of like the side questy tac ops and stuff like that. Even in scenarios in which like they have like contain or stuff like that, secure ground is really great to like counter contain because you have to be on their side anyway to get secure ground anyway. So thinking about things like that and kind of before I even, what's nice about Plague Marines is they don't have a lot of flex, and I very rarely like change over the operatives. Like for example, when I was playing Inquisition, so much of my game plan relied on like what operatives I was taking, and bear in mind this was in 2nd edition. And Inquisition was, in my opinion, probably a little harder to play. Because like, for example, having Quarry only be balanced was such a different dynamic. But in terms of like game plan, first thing I do is sit at the table and obviously I'm assessing what am I playing into. So like, for example, going into Cherokee, the big teams like I'm kind of worried about are like Legionnaire, Void Dancers, anyone that's like really like significantly faster than me, right? So like sitting down being like, okay, so I definitely need to like think of a way that I can overcome this particular weakness through my game plan, which ties back into, okay, so if I'm taking contain and my opponent has to step into my territory, and if I'm kind of like setting up these positions that I'm going to be in good like areas to like shoot back or charge and fight or basically push them back, right? As cliche as it is, like using, this is going to sound really cliche, using real life like battle tactics that like real armies use is like a very good way to think about it, right? So like Death Guard in general, like both in lore and in game, generally want to dig in and just counter and hit their opponent and push them away, right? And a good way you facilitate that, and like that's kind of what I've been doing recently, is making sure that the long range shooters are like basically have full view of the map, but also they're not far enough away to where they can't do objectives they don't need to. So they're basically acting like moving turrets, right? And then all of my hitters, they're like basically on the line and kind of like once again rebuffing the opponent and getting bracing for counterattack and things like that. and basically getting in the death guard mindset, if you will, of attrition style warfare. That like I know my opponent is going to, like, for example, if it's goats, they're going to come running into me, and that's great for me because they'll be hitting on 4s or 5s, and I get Cecils for not moving and stuff like that. So I'd rather just plant myself in a like on a point or in a position and just let my opponent come to me and kind of feed that into it. For different teams, right, for more aggressive teams, scouts can't really like play that way, for example, because they don't have access to the necessary attack ops to do so. So all of it just comes around like your particular play style, what highlights the best aspects of the team, right? So like we talk about play style a lot, but certain play styles just are better for certain teams, right? So the play style I just described for Death Guard is not really, like I said, going to work for scouts because they don't have the tac ops to facilitate that. So you need to like swing your game plan around to something more aggressive, like taking advantage of like those shotguns that they have, because hitting on 2s is so rare in the game now. So really like flexing that killing power is like their big strength. So I think a lot of it is just, before you even sit down in the game, is knowing the strengths of your team before you sit down. Let's take Angels of Death, for example. That is the biggest strength of that team is just how flexible they are, right? That you can pretty much take any comp you want to hit your opponent in the face as hard as you need to, right? So like a hard shooting comp is like especially like Stalker Bolt rifles is going to be really good into certain teams. Whereas, rush down J-Face style is going to be much better into other teams. And that's going to be a much harder way to formulate your game because it requires your brain to also be flexible in the way that you're sitting down and being like, okay, well, what's going to be the best into this? What's going to be the best into that? So my general recommendation to people, especially if you're like first like dipping your toe into like competitive mindset, is like, don't take a team that's going to just mentally overload you to start off with, right? You take that like first step.
I'm going to stop you there because you mentioned a couple of things earlier that I really want to double back on because I think they're really important. You mentioned how you are really trying to pick tac ops that are not only like good and synergistic with how your team wants to operate, but are actively trying to interfere with what you expect your opponent's game plan to be. I think that's such a great way to try and play the game at a high level because I think that it is very like I think that a lot of people at this point, even after the data slate, I think that the meta is kind of figured out. We all know what the best 2 tac ops in each archetype are. And I think we all are expecting teams to pick those 2. And we kind of, if a team has security and seek and destroy, we kind of know what they're going to lean into, especially if you're playing like a team like Angels of Death versus a team like, let's say, Inquisition into them. You're not going to play Seek and Destroy into a Horde team more likely than not.
If I could give actually a great count, like a great like because typically with the way that these tac ops work, security is actually a great way to play that, and that's usually like I take the most advantage of it. But to give an example that I just thought of regarding like me and George when we played our game a while back between Plague Marines and Elves, or between Void Dancers, is plant beacons actually in and of itself can also be a good way to counter your opponent's game plan. So like, for example, Plague Marines want to sink their teeth into you. They want to start, those poison tokens, all that other stuff. But Elves can play in such a way where they just they can get around interacting with you, right? Especially with 7-inch movements. So like, going over terrain, planting a beacon just barely over the line, and then running back into cover, taking advantage of the fact that I can't really get near you because I just am much slower than you. That's another great example of like how you can pick tac ops that counter your opponent's game plan. Another great example.
Also, Storm Objective is a great tac op to stop contain, because the easiest way to score Storm Objective is just stand on your opponent's home objective. As long as there's no one there and you end an activation on it, you don't need to bully anyone off of it. You just storm it, and you can just storm it and hold it and score it. And so that's a great way to just bully contain teams.
Another good one, Champion. People always view Seek and Destroy tac ops as like very aggressive and like you need to be the aggressor. Champion is actually really good to like counterpunch for your opponent. So like, for example, if I know I've lost initiative, and I'm going to know I lost initiative before picking Champion, if I know that Mark's Legionnaire is going to charge into this guy because it's his best option. He's going to probably get that kill. I know for a fact he's probably going to do well unless he completely beefs it, right? I can then, if I've set up in such a way, take on one of my other powerful operatives to kill that operative on the next activation, knowing he's going to be down on wounds. It is a great tack off to take to even counterpunch into an aggressive opponent where you would think Champion in and of itself is an aggressive tackle, but can be surprisingly used defensively.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you're forcing your opponent to make a difficult decision. Do I do something about the champion to deny points, or do I take this high value play that I was, that I highly telegraphed at the end of my last turn?
Absolutely. And always taking, basically, I forget what's the old Sun Tzu quote, never
interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like that's a great example of
like that I knew that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I George, you would be the person that would know that off the top of your head.
I got some 5 rings in here too.
Jesus Christ. But like, I know, like, once again, it's cliche, but like genuinely stuff like from like genuine military tactics is surprisingly effective in Kill Team, because Kill Team does function very similarly to a normal battlefield in terms of like the way like chess operates. I mean, I think even in some of the great leaders in history used chess as a way to practice tactics, right? You can use those similar techniques in Kill Team, and you'll be shocked how much it improves your game.
So I actually have a question for you, Joe. I don't know if you specifically touched on it, but do you factor in the kill op to your game plan?
So here's the thing. We had a conversation on this podcast 2-3 weeks ago, I think, about the value of the kill op. And we had basically been like, a lot of people have come to the conclusion that like it's not as useful because you can't really plan around it. And it's so hard when, especially this is a dice game and you can't really plan around it. So recently I actually took an active effort to be like, okay, certain teams, I know for a fact they don't want to like even get anywhere near me and are actively worse for trying to go and kill me. And I can probably get very close to wiping them if I push aggressively. And I actually surprisingly found that you can do this. So maybe in the future I will, particularly right now because Plague Marines just, because of their movement, are restricted in the way that they can do that. Like I discovered with Scouts recently, this particular thing. I think that there is a world in which the more I dig into Scouts, the more I figure out, and I think this is my theory, and I think this will change game plan, is I think they are just really good at killing things. And I think...
Are you telling me that 4 shotguns that hit on 2 is good at killing things?
You know what, George? I am saying that. And, as much as we're joking about...
fucking take.
As much as we're joking about it right now, like legitimately, it's something you can factor in. It's like, for example, if I'm going into an elf team as Scouts, I had a game in which I played Eddie recently in Scouts versus his elves. I lost by 1 point, but I was so close to taking the kill op in that game. Because I was like, you know what, he's probably going to push into me, and we're going to do this trading war, and I'm likely going to win because I have more wounds. Luckily, I didn't, because he kept rolling a lot of 5s and 6s, and I just wasn't killing things when I should have been. And that's the thing, right? Like it just sometimes happens that way, even when you're hitting on 2s. So I don't know. I truly don't know. Maybe if you're really confident in your dice, maybe.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem I have with the kill op, is that even more than like the seek and destroy tac ops, that is so incredibly dice dependent that if you're just having a bad game, maybe you score 1 or 2 points on it. And if you're having an excellent game, you max it out. You tell your opponent. Well, like,
you can't guarantee it.
Plan on it. Yeah.
I think that there are, in fact, some teams where you do need to plan on the kill op as a part of your game plan. And I'll use this as a little bit of a gateway into talking about how I have been making game plans. Specifically in 3rd edition, I have been playing Felgor, as has been mentioned on the pod before. And what I've been doing lately is I've been playing plant beacons. I've heard a lot of people say it's the best tac op. And so I've built my whole game plan around playing plant beacons, right? So I want to position goats in a way to where I can move up the board when I can basically look at like a long board versus a short board on Volcus, and I know I like exactly how far I need to be on the other side of center in order to plant. I know basically where I want to plant all my beacons before the game, and then kind of where I'm going to fall back to if, like, my first option to go plant in up like in enemy territory on turn 2 dies pretty quickly. The nice thing about goats is you can give anybody the extra inch to go and do that. And it's been a good game plan. Obviously, it's really nice because it kind of denies that interactability that some of the other tech ops have. The thing that's difficult about that particular game plan, though, is that the thing that is inherent about goats is they're just going to die, right? Like a goat is going to run out and do his business and die. And goats are a team where you're getting a lot of your value out of the models by killing them, right? You go out, do something like plant a beacon, goat dies, goat goes kill somebody else. That's great, but that's a dead model, right? And so I think the thing about playing Felgor is no matter what game plan you do, you really have to factor in the kill op into your game plan because your team is so inherently synergistic with models being taken off of the board.
That's fair. I think that's definitely fair to look at it that way.
But I think to your point that the models are so synergistic with the kill op is I think for Ravagers, Storm Objective is the default tac op. Now, Plant Beacon is the better tac op in a complete void. In a void, Plant Beacon beats Storm Objective all day, every day. But when you factor in that goats are a 10 model to APL team, and a lot of their value is in dealing damage, spending an APL not dealing damage it feels sort of anti-synergistic with how the team wants to play. And so, like, for Plant Beacons, you need to spend a minimum of 2 models each turn to score those 2 points, while with Storm Objective, if you can pop a dude off an objective, you storm it, you score your point. If they don't kill you back, or even if they do, you're frenzied. If they don't get to that objective on your frenzied goat, you still score the second point. If you can get to your opponent's home objective and just stand there with a goat, you score 2 points if they don't do anything about it. So, like, I think Plant Beacon, you were not led astray that Plant Beacon is the better tac op. It's just not the better tac op, I think, for that particular team.
Right. I 100% agree. Like, that's the conclusion I've come to. I do think that there are certain matchups, maybe certain maps, where it is a good idea to play Plant Beacon, but I don't think it should be the default by any means. Again, I don't think it's like, I don't want to call it anti-synergy just because it's such a tried and true and reliable strategy.
I mean, it's no implant.
Yeah, it's no implant.
The best tac op.
I think simply put is like, I think that I have to, if let's say I'm playing Storm Objective, let's say I'm playing Confirm Kill, any of these like tac ops that do have good synergy, it still requires putting models out into the open to die, again, just to like activate the synergy of the team. So it's like, I really have to be cognizant of the kill op the whole time I'm playing the game, just because it is very easy for somebody to get ahead of you if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I think it's particularly like, to reference it in our game at the end of the last tournament, Mark, I asked the question because I completely forgotten, like, oh, do the goats die at the end of turning point 4? And it's like, I forget how many goats you had frenzied at that point. I don't think it was many, but it was enough.
Oh, no, most of my goats died in turns 2 and 3.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, and as soon as they're frenzied, the kill op ticks up.
Yeah, so it's like, I think to speak to your point, I think you realized during that game, like, it was starting to like tally up like how much I was killing.
Well, I think I've realized it in a lot of games. Like a lot of those games that I was playing Plant Beacon, I was winning, but I was winning by like 2 points, 4 points. And the kill op was a factor that was giving my opponent a lot of catch up in games that I was like smoking them in like tac op per se, or where I was like really doing well in tac op and also doing really well in crit op. Like, they have more kill op points than me, right?
Yeah.
Or have managed to kill off enough to really keep up with me there and just like keep me from getting so far ahead with the lead. And yes, I 100% like that. The kill op was the deciding factor in our last game, but it was an idea that had like made manifest like not long before that, but in like probably the week before that, that was really like crystallized in that game, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you talk about it, you do make me think, like, so I say the kill up is not part of my game plan, but that's not necessarily true, actually. I think about the kill up as part of my, like, core game skill, in that everything I do in a way to minimize the ability for me to get retaliated against. So if I'm charging and fighting, I'm going to charge and fight in such a way where I am in cover and obscured if possible, not visible to anyone who I'm scared of being shot at if possible. Or if I'm shooting, I'll take good shots and then move away to block visibility. Or if I have to move to get those shots, I'm moving away where I'm obscured from any return fire. And so, like, kill up is part of my game plan, but not in a way that I'm actively thinking about it, but more in a way where I want to make sure that the minimum amount, my opponent is scoring the minimum amount of kill up across the entire game, just in the way that I play.
Yeah, I think for example, when you really finish a game, I think kill up is one of those things that really like sneaks up on you when you don't really think about it. Like during the vast majority of your game, especially since like we're so tac op pilled right now as a community, it can be very easy to like let that huge part of the game slip.
What about when things like when you get into the flow of the game? Is there anything that you think about to like adapt your game plan? Like, what are elements that you are really like keyed in on that are going to change and affect your game plan?
Yeah, I've played a couple of games where, like, my game plan was to capture objectives, do some crit op, and then get up on the tac op. And then my opponent just gets there first, sets up a really good defensive strategy, and like, all right, I'm not touching these crit ops anymore. I'm gonna switch to tac ops, and then I'm gonna just try and remove them off the board. And like, I've won a couple games doing that. I've lost a couple games trying to pivot to that. But I think since there are multiple ways to score this game, as long as your opponent doesn't lock you out of the thing you chose primary for, then I think you can pivot to trying to score the other stuff as well.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about the new edition, right? Is that there are so many different ways to score. You can kind of pick up points wherever they happen to be available. And your game plan is ultimately going to be built around your primary op. Would you not both agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. Here's where I'm gonna be. Actually, my primary op is based on my game plan, not the other way around.
Tell me more.
So I choose my primary op based on how I think the game is gonna go. So if I'm, say, playing Ravagers into any elf team, and I'm going to pick Storm Objective, and I'm going to assume that I'm not going to score that a whole lot. But what I am going to assume is I'm going to score the crit op a bunch, because I can just bully elves all day, every day. So I'm going to choose my primary as a crit op, try and get as much Storm Objective as possible, but I know that if they try and get to objectives, I'm going to be able to bully them off of them.
Yeah, and I like that too because you're picking Storm Objective, which is going to kind of force them onto objectives. Like that was a problem I had early on with Storm Objective, is because I hadn't fully read it, knowing that you can just go into the enemy objective and take that as a Storm Objective. I was thinking a lot about it is like not a lot of people are moving up onto the central objective at the start of Turning Point 1 anymore, and so you hate to have just like a dead turn of tac ops. But like if you were taking Storm Objective and you were pushing into the enemy territory, not only do they have a fire that they have to put out, they still have to push up. And so they're just going to have less support as they do that. Very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of people really want to outscore you early on turn 2, and I'm happy to let my opponent rush to the objectives, score some stuff. I will let them rush to my home objective, even score some stuff, and then I will, after a couple of activations, go ahead and just wipe them off, like kill 3-4 models, whatever they did to, secure those points. And when you lose that many models at a turn, it's hard to rebound from that, because usually those are all the models that they threw up into the center. And so from that point, you just sort of stage up, and then on turn 3 and 4, you move up and you score Storm on your opponent's home objective, no problem. You control all 3 objectives. You only need to control 2 most of the time, but hell, you control all 3. So yeah, I like doing that a lot, even when I'm not playing Storm objective. Like when I'm playing Contain or Take Ground, I'll let my opponent get up on crit up on turn 2, punish them for being aggressive and moving up the board like that, and then from there I'll just outscore them the rest of the game.
Such an interesting way to think about making a game plan. Joe, how do you factor the primary into your game plan?
I mean, to me, it's kind of the way you win the game, because it's such a score swing, especially when you start counting things up and you go, oh, wow, like this mattered a lot, right? If you're getting 1 point on your primary because you only got 2 on you're probably not winning that game. So for me, it is something I actively think about the entire game. But to George's point, like it's not the tail wagging the dog, right? Like if you have a solid game plan going into the game, like you're gonna naturally play into what you picked as your primary, right? So if I'm playing in the way that I described, like how I use TAC Ops, right? I'm likely going to be getting the points that I need to anyway, and not like it'd be like, oh, like I'm really scrambling for points right now, right? Part of the reason I play so quickly a lot of the time is I have already in my head thought about my opponent's most optimal play and go counterpoint, 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 right? There's obvious benefit to that, but the obvious flaw in that is like if my opponent doesn't make those moves, right? And like having that level of flexibility to be like, oh, I think my opponent is likely going to do XYZ, and then oh no, they did, A, B, C, D, right? And kind of being able to take that information and transplant it immediately into your game plan is going to lead into you winning and also just getting the primary.
Yeah, like I like to think about what is my optimal move before what is my opponent's optimal move. And I'll still think about what my opponent's optimal move is. Like, what do I think they're going to do to fuck up my game plan the most? And then if they do that, I have an answer. And if they don't do that, well, I know exactly what I'm going to do because I've already calculated what the best move for my game plan is. And then they did not interrupt me doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've already basically like thought about that of like what I would like to do, on that turn. Sometimes I'll find out like, oh, I can't do that because I don't necessarily have the movement for it, or my opponent's done something and stuff like that. But generally having that idea of like A to B to C to D is a good flow to get into.
Yeah, and I think I want to just double click on something you mentioned earlier and how it can integrate into some of this. You mentioned earlier this idea of sort of like classical military strategy, and I don't really want to dig into that necessarily, but I have been thinking a lot about unit placement and troop movement in a way because I I used to play StarCraft 2 maybe like a decade 15 years ago, and I played Zerg a lot, and like the strategy that I would always play is I would have like roaches and hydralisks. I'd have this big like shooting army, and like I would always try and get like this concave around my enemy, right? So that I could have all of my guns firing in. And what I noticed I did in a game last week was I had somehow kind of like created a pattern on the board where my units had done the same thing. And it was like my Felgor were basically like collapsing in on a corner where a lot of units were like condensed in. And I think what this has kind of jogged in my mind is I've been so used to playing a reactive play style that I don't think as much about like where I want my units to be in turn 2 and turn 3 on the board, because I've played so much where it's like I know where I want my units to be turn 1 and turn 2 because I want them to be able to respond to your move, your unit going here, your unit going here. And as I lean into like a more aggressive game plan and a more like a more forward moving kind of team, I think that I need to spend more time thinking about unit placement, unit movement in that sense as part of the game plan, right? Like obviously I know where I want my death knell, gong knell, where I want my icon bearer to be. I know where I want, my biggest threats to be, that sort of thing, but where do I want them to be after that? And then who, like, my weakest units, what do I want them doing? Where do I want them to be? Like, really just trying to nail down some of these things ahead of time. And because those kinds of things are the thing that help you get that mental advantage, Joe, to your point, to help you think 2 or 3 turns ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It's knowing where your opponent's going to be and taking advantage of the knowledge they don't have before they even have it.
Yeah, just read minds. Easy peasy. Easy game.
Yeah.
I mean, we joke, but like, I mean, literally, if you're able to read your opponent like that, you're going to win that game. Like, I've had games where I was able to read my opponent like that, and I was like, all right, knowing, like, and to be fair, part of this is because we play the same people so often because of the league and stuff like that. I've gotten to that point where I have pretty solidly down pretty much how everyone in the community like plays in my head. So like I've gotten to the point where I can likely I know generally your both of your tendencies, right? Not that it's always worked out in my favor, but I generally know what George's tendencies are. I know what Mark French's tendencies are, stuff like that. And in a big tournament setting, that's a big advantage.
To be fair, I know exactly what Mark French is going to do in any game we play on every
it's
activation.
No secret. It's no secret.
And that doesn't necessarily help me.
Yeah. I actually really want to have a conversation on another podcast about this pretty soon, about how to like really develop like how can one make the most out of like a sparring partner type of relationship, because I think that a lot of people in our community, we're all playing the same people all the time. And so like how can you really like learn new things every time that you're going against these people? I think that we're, really blessed to have such a big community. So I feel like it's easier for us to learn new things every single time. But like I don't think that everybody has that same privilege, right? To have such a large community around them that's playing Kill Team. And so I would love to dig into that. But something else I want to dig into today is just a little preview of the Cherokee Open. Before we do that, any closing thoughts on Gameplan? I think this has been an awesome discussion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to speak real quickly to the tail, put a bit of a cap on that discussion about partner. One of the things I've talked to, I think, with George multiple times. For those of you that know, the Garretts are a prolific family of kill teamers around in the community, and it's a family of 2 sons and a father, and they have a massive benefit of being able to play each other and play test against each other. I think it's a huge reason why all 3 of them play so well. Be having that instant access to a really good player. Like, not even we necessarily have that, right? Not like that instant access.
I mean, all 3 are golden ticket winners, right?
Yeah,
all
exactly.
3 are world champ level players, and they're all fantastic. I've played against all 3 of them. I always love playing against the Garretts. They're amazing to play against. They're super fun. They're great people. And the competition they bring is just on point. It's so good.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I've also played all 3 of them. They're absolute, awesome people to play. And like I said, they always bring the game because they're bringing the game to each other. It's a great relationship to have when your brother's a world champion.
Yeah. But as far as game plan goes, if you're struggling to win games in Kill Team, then I think the odds are is you don't actually have a game plan. Even if you think you do, your game plan isn't as set in stone, or you're not following it. Even if you make a bad game plan, and trust me, I've made some bad game plans, but if you stick to them, you'll still score a bunch. I don't win with my bad game plans, don't get me wrong, but there are always close games where normally if you make a bad game plan or don't stick to your game plan, you get absolutely blown out of the water.
Yeah, 100%. I remember in 2nd edition, I feel like picking tac ops was the thing that really kind of set my game up to a higher level. I think that was a bit of a reductive way to think about it, though. I think that picking the tac ops is what helped me start to generate the game plan, and that is ultimately what helped me kind of elevate my game.
Absolutely.
So Cherokee Open, we talked a little bit earlier about that there's going to be a raffle, there's going to be narrative action, there's going to be 6-round grand tournaments. I think that we've got the last word is that we're going to have a modest turnout. So I think that the golden ticket's going to be right for the taking.
Yeah.
It will not be easy. I will say that. Don't let's not confuse right for the taking with easy.
No, absolutely not. I know that everybody in our local community has been preparing for this, grinding out games. A lot of people have really been trying to step it up over the last couple of months. And honestly, I'm really just so proud of everyone in our community. Like, I remember like last edition when I was really trying to just like grind and get better. And I've started to do the same this edition, and just seeing everybody else just really, really push themselves. It's just so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's this like collective active effort you don't see in a lot of places. Like, I think all of us work these like sometimes monotonous jobs, and to see such like a concerted effort for this like hobby we all have a passion about is really really fun to watch. Like especially watch people who have like, I'm gonna straight up, and I know he literally says he will never and will never listen to the podcast. Andy in our community, for example, is a great example. He's a guy that I've been playing with since the very beginning, before I even was playing y'all, to be honest. I remember one of our first matchups was Pathfinders into Vetguard. And playing with him from like the middle to second half of second edition, and a guy who's always been down on himself about how he's not a great player, and I've always told him that he's a great player. And for him like putting in the prep work between now to Cherokee and see him really elevate his play, from most recently I've seen it. I'm really happy and proud of him as a friend. And this applies to the whole community.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, Joe. It's the passion that everybody brings to the game, and that passion really manifests in that effort to like, keep getting better.
It's the as the cliche as this is, and I keep saying that, but cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Because they're good. Is the anime rivalry we have a lot of the time as a community of like, trying to compete with each other, and the Naruto Sasuke like relationship we have with each other sometimes of like clashing heads and kind of like pushing each other to the limits.
Nerd.
Shut up. It's one of the most popular mediums in the world. You can't say that anymore.
I just call them all nerds. I'll double down.
What do they have anime in Britain?
I mean,
is anime real?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if are you being serious? Because the answer is obviously yes. I mean, they do it the same way we have access to all the streaming platforms. I mean,
I think anime was real in the 90s and early 2000s when they had to actually draw that shit.
Here we go with the contrarian nonsense.
Is anything digital really real? Is this podcast real?
Can you
I
ship
didn't know
a boat?
You were going this route.
Is a ship a boat?
Is a boat a ship?
You replace all the planks on the ship and leave the one plank from the original ship. Is it the original ship or is it the old ship? What is that? The ship of Theseus?
Right? Yeah, all right.
Well, to be cliche, I don't think that despite the turnout, I don't think that any golden ticket run is an easy one. So Joe, do you want to maybe like preview anything that you're planning on for, the grand tournament?
Sure. Let's start with the fluff, right? So, I genuinely, I think I'm more excited for the narrative than I am the grand. Because
it's such a good. Day came up with like 90% of everything that in the narrative. I just made what she came up with kill team compatible.
Yeah,
I'm super excited. It sounds like y'all really tried to make something fresh.
That's what I'm saying. Like something fresh, it just low key. I love that I'm repping Chaos Space Marines. I literally bought a fucking Death Guard banner. I don't know how big this thing is. I guess Walmart was randomly selling them on their website. And so I'm bringing that. We got the Vox Scream jerseys we just got in. So we get to rep the podcast on them that look fucking awesome, by the way. Thank you, Mark, for doing that. I am genuinely, because the competition, it's a competition. We're competing for potentially a once in a lifetime opportunity to play with
to represent our community on the global stage.
point is that like we have people from outside of the state coming in to potentially take this golden ticket out of the community, right? And not that that's a bad thing in by any stretch of the imagination, right? It's good and competitive, but like there is a little bit of stress, I feel like, on me and a few other players who have the opportunity to get that, because this is because I mean, that's for as much as our community is filled with like really good players, none of us have gotten a golden ticket before. And this would be potentially the first golden ticket in our community. And, you know, that on some level puts some stress on me because, you know, people view me as like a good player. And
Which you are.
which, you know, I'm not. I would like to win the golden ticket is the kind of the roundabout way that I'm kind of saying this. And
listen,
you know,
I've been saying to everyone in our community that we have one of the toughest metas in the country. Definitely only beat by Central Virginia because they have multiple. They have Orion Wilfong, all the Garretts. They have multiple golden ticket winners. And then the
Southern
Bay
California,
Area,
you'd probably say, yeah.
Yeah, the Bay Area also has multiple golden ticket winners. But like in North Carolina, we just have so many players playing so much that like even our average player can go to Central Virginia or the Bay Area and like show up and do well.
yeah,
Like
and we usually do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the highest we've got. I think George, you at NYO last year got very close.
11th. I lost to second and third. And
you know, I was in the second pod for Nova, so I was one pod away from being in the top pod. And actually, had I gotten slipped into the first pod, I likely would have gotten the golden ticket.
Yeah, you finished in the top 16, didn't you, Joe?
Yes, I did. I finished 14th. So you know, had I gotten to the first pod because so many people had a golden ticket, there was a very good chance I could have gotten the golden ticket. So yeah, like, I
mean, top 25 for George at LVO as well.
Yes,
certainly
exactly. Well, number 23 at 158.
We compete is the point, and it's going to be stressful for those 2 days against people that I care about. And you know, sometimes I've been struggling with my competitive nature sometimes, and I'm really trying to like put a lid on it and be a better sportsman. And you know, in an event like this, it's weird. I'm focusing less on the practical aspects of the game than I am like the environment around me and what's coming out of my own mouth.
Which I think is important, because if you're tilted, you play worse.
Yes.
So being able to control your emotions is a huge step in being able to play well no matter the situation you're in.
Right. And I think, but for me, it's less a concern about like that, more as like I want to represent the community well while also potentially getting the golden ticket. And you know,
Joe, it would make me upset if I had to yellow card you.
That's what I'm saying. And like, bear in mind, and just for clarity, I've never been close to having to get yellow carded at any of your events. No. Correct?
Joe has not come anywhere close to that. There was one situation in our last monthly that could have been resolved, but like neither player was malicious to each other. There was no active cheating going on. There was just some miscommunication, and it was too late to solve that miscommunication by the time the judge, was brought over. So
yeah, and for clarity, I mean, that's part of the reason why like I've been actively thinking about it, because I want to be this competitive person, but also understand like I do have a responsibility now because of this podcast, because of, you know, being a representative of this community, to make sure I'm representing not only myself well, but the community itself, because we're the loudest voices in the room. And that it weighs on me a little bit, you know? And
I'm going to bring some things to the table here that I've been thinking about as I approach Cherokee. And I'm not saying that this is advice that you have to take, Joe, but this is stuff that I've been thinking about that I'm really going to try and be cognizant of. One thing that I heard, I want to say it was maybe 2 weeks ago on the Squad Games podcast, they had Jimmy Kelly on, and he said something that felt really insightful to me. And what
great
he said
lad,
was,
by the way.
Say what?
Love Jimmy Kelly. He's a great man. Met him in person. Awesome.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to meet him in person yet, but listening to his interview, he sounds stellar, and I would be super grateful for the chance to meet him or play against him or have a beer with him, anything like that. But what he said was, I think it was something along the lines of, in order to win a tournament or to like elevate your competitive player to even be really competitive, what you have to do is in each game, you have to truly believe that you're capable of winning, but also 100% accept that losing is okay. And so that's something I'm really going to try and be aware of, because I mean, you don't have to win every game at a 6-round tournament. Like first place could be 5-1. First place could be
exactly
4-1-1. You know, we don't know how crazy these games are going to be. Again, I think that everybody in our community is really going to bring their A game. And I think that every round is going to be super tough.
Yep.
And also the idea of like, it's 100% okay to lose. Again, there's something you can learn from every game, and something that you learn by losing game 1 or 2 or even game 5 can help you win game 6. And that's like, you know, finish strong is always such an important mindset to have. I think, you know, that was something I remember at Nova. And towards the end, I was really just tired, but I was like, I got to finish strong. And so instead of dropping my last game on the last day, met someone from the kill team, John. They were super cool. We had an awesome game, had a really great time. And so like, I wouldn't have had that experience if I didn't finish strong. Right.
Yeah.
And so those are two things that I'm really thinking about. I'm also thinking about, you know, obviously, like, you know, I'm not expecting a ton of people to come in from, you know, out of state or, you know, just podcast fans abroad to come in. But, you know, I'm really going to try and just enjoy the social experience. And I think doing that, focusing more on enjoying the social experience, is going to relax me and make my competitive play better. Like if I'm less stressed and less high strung about the competitive game, I think that I'll be able to play the game better.
Yeah, I mean, reminder, this is at a casino, y'all. So
yeah, and to your point, at LVO, twice I was told. So one time I was told, you were the most clear opponent I've ever played against. I never felt like I was missing any information. And hearing that, I was like, I don't give a shit what if I lose every game from this point on. That right there, that compliment, is the reason that I play competitive kill team. Is that I want to win and have my opponent say, this was the most fun game I played all weekend, or this game, I never felt like I was missing information.
Yeah, absolutely. And to adjust a little bit to like the actual practical aspect. I'm playing Plague Marines. Mark, you are playing Goats.
Yep. Felgor, baby.
Felgor, both two really great teams. You know, I think Felgor's are probably going to have a better chance. So
I don't know. I think that elites are going to be prevalent for sure.
That's what I'm saying. Unless you run into a bunch of elite players, and then you're probably going to have a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and I think that Plague Marines are going to be flexible enough to go into a lot of matchups that are, you know, the difficult meta matchups right now.
And that's kind of my thought going into this, is like, my worst matchups are not so bad that they're unwinnable. I don't think I have a single matchup where I'm sitting at the table and going, I'm really, really going to have to struggle to win this game. And a huge part of that is going to be being, active about my movement, because, you know, that 5 inches can be super limiting, especially on Into the Dark. Something I've been really, really hampering on is like making sure I'm basically within 4 inches of everything on Into the Dark. Just because that accessibility issue can be a real pain in the ass. But if you could set it up just right, it becomes less of a pain in the ass. I think letting my opponents come to me and kind of really take advantage of that ceaseless on literally everything, as long as you don't really move, is a big advantage, because I can't think of another team that just literally gets ceaseless on everything.
I mean, Deathcore do, but they're also bad.
Yes, they also hit on force. So like getting ceaseless for just doing my game plan is real good. Maybe too good. I don't know. And yeah, just focus on that, and that should hopefully carry me to a win. Teams I'm kind of the most worried about, and I'm curious if you guys agree with me. I would say like the most at the top of that list is probably Void Dancers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about them mostly just because I haven't played against them. It's the same thing as last edition. It's just like not a team that I see a lot of play locally.
Yeah.
And so it's like when they show up at a tournament, I feel like I'm on the back foot.
Yep. Void, I mean, I have a good grasp on them. It's just, they're just so fast. Void Dancers kind of next in the pack, I would say, is probably like Angels of Death. I would say that's more of like a middle of the road matchup, and it's really going to depend on my opponent's comp. But they just have so much access to piercing, and similar attack ops stuff. It can,
Yeah,
it can
dude,
be
I'm gonna have
real-
such a bad time if I run into Angels of Death.
Yeah. I'm actually feeling really good into like Nemesis Claw or Legionary, because if I'm playing the right game, they should be charging it to me. They'll be hitting on 4s most of the time. Should be good there. And then like the other team that like I'm actually like genuinely concerned about would probably be Corsairs, but Corsairs is another issue where it's like their candle burns bright but can burn out quick. So if I'm playing in the right way and I'm dealing with the right threats at the right moment, I shouldn't have to worry about losing multiple Marines to the same model. I think it's kind of inevitable in the Corsairs matchup, especially as an elite player, that you're gonna lose. You're gonna probably trade just because of just how offensively good they are at just killing Marines, just flat out. So the Pistolier is a good example. Blaster is a good example. Though the Blaster against Plague Marines, you can make it a bolter with AP2, which is not great, but better than 4/5. So
I think we're getting a little afield here. Any final thoughts as you're like preparing for Cherokee?
No, I think I feel really good about my Plague Marine play lately. And, I think that is solid play is what eventually gets you to the podium. And as long as I, can keep my head on straight, that I should have a pretty okay run and maybe even get that golden ticket.
I don't think anyone would be surprised if you won the golden ticket, Joe.
I hope so. It would feel real good. It'd be a culmination of 2 years of playing this game.
George, any final Art of War quotes before we get out of here?
Any more aphorisms for us?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu said, "Be a good sportsman. I'm gonna kick you out of the event."
Yeah, and which once again, we've never literally had anyone come close to that issue in any of our tournaments. So
Or
none
any
of us
tournament
are.
I've ever been to. So it's not something I'm worried
That's
about.
a fair point.
But it just goes to reinforce the sportsmanship expectation that all tournament goers of Kill Team really do have. Because again, LVO, I've never heard of anything going on sportsmanship. There was 160 players. Nova has never had any sportsmanship issues, and I don't expect any. But if in order to prevent any sportsmanship issues, if you're having a disagreement with your opponent, call a judge over. If you're having any miscommunication issues, call a judge over. If you're looking at a rule and you and your opponent disagreeing what that rule means, call a judge over. Just call a judge over. Our job is to make sure that the game runs smoothly and no one's butt is hurt.
Yeah, literally, just don't hesitate. Just if you feel weird, just call a judge.
Yeah, and I mean, sportsmanship has been a hot topic in the community lately, and I think it is, again, it's the exception rather than the norm. So it's not an issue that you're likely to deal with, but, the TOs are there to help you, and, you have to advocate for yourself. So,
yes, that's a very important part. Advocate for yourself.
Well, everyone, this has been an awesome time. I am super grateful to have had this chat with both of you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Cherokee. See you at the craps tables, boys.
See you at the other side, folks.
I only gamble with my life.
Me too.
I only gamble with George's life.
Ooh, double dipping.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Vox Screen. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Any of those things are going to help us grow. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.